Hey everybody, in this tutorial I'm going to introduce you to the basics of lighting in iClone. So we're going to talk about the various types of lights and different scenarios in which you can use them. Alright, so on the screen right now we have a very dark and ominous looking black scene with no lights. Have you ever come across a situation like this where your scene has no lights and you want to see things? You can go up here and use this function called auxiliary light, okay? So auxiliary light will just basically light everything in your scene with a very flat light, no shadows or no shading or gradients or anything like that. Just a flat, even light. You can use this if you don't want to use system resources for lighting and shadows. You want to just focus on animation or moving props. This is a great way to do that using the auxiliary light. You can see if I move out of here, we're just in a big white void inside the middle of a rectangular box. Isn't that light? Okay, anyways, let's go ahead and take a look at the different types of light that we can use. First of all, by taking a look at the different types of atmospheric lights that we can use in our scene. Okay, so I'm going to turn off my auxiliary light for now, and I'm going to go over here to our Visual tab. Okay, and in the Visual tab, you will find something called Image-Based Lighting. All right, I'm going to activate Image-Based Lighting, and that's going to light up my scene. Now you're probably wondering, how is my scene being lit up? It's being lit up by this image right here with a big bright window in the middle of it. So just picture like the scene that you're in has a big sphere. So you're in this big sphere, and on the inside of that sphere is pasted this high resolution image of this room and stuff. And if you move this image around, it's going to focus different areas of light from the image on different areas of your scene. So let's go ahead and bring something else into our scene here. I'm going to go to my scene manager and into props. And I'm going to make this material ball visible here because this one is very reflective and it shows us where exactly the light is coming from. Okay, so you can see right here, if you look at the reflection, that's kind of like the big window in our IBL image right here. Okay, it's coming from that direction. If we want to rotate it, we can go down here and use this option, or else use the Shift-I hotkey. It'll bring up a rotation gizmo and we can move it around. Now notice that if I move it this way, the light gradually starts to come from like behind Curveman, okay? So you can see a silhouette kind of forming there. And if we move it this way, rotate it around this way, you'll see that big window will start to rotate towards this direction. And now the window is shining directly on Curveman, okay? So this window here is kind of shining that direction, away from us, okay? I'll move it over here. It'll be to our right and to Curveman's left, as you see the shadows forming on his right side. Okay, so that's IBL basically, and IBL does not cast shadows. It's used for atmospheric kind of lighting of your scene as a standard, as a base, basically, to begin constructing your scene lighting. And you can adjust the strength here as well to high levels or low levels, and you can also change the IBL image and all that fun stuff. We're not going to worry about that in this tutorial. It's a bit more advanced, but for now we're just going to turn off the rotation. And we're going to leave our IBL on for now because the next thing we're going to talk about is ambient light in your scene. Okay, so still in the Visual tab and still in the Atmosphere tab up here at the top, you want to go up to the very top and there's something called ambient light. So this is kind of used to set the overall atmosphere or tone of your scene, and the default is a fairly black color, almost pitch black basically. Okay, and what you can do here is if you want to say, for example, Curveman is taking a stroll in the red light district or something, you can use something like a reddish kind of pink color, something like this, and there you go. Now it's a very bright kind of pink. The entire scene is lit up in an ambient sort of pinkish color. I'm going to just make this material invisible for now. All right, and if you want, you can change that to something darker. Normally the ambient color is recommended to do something a bit darker, like maybe a dark green like this. You can see the result right there. If you make it too bright, it's going to look really weird, like something like this, for example. This yellow, really bright yellow will just be really too overexposed. Again, it's a stylistic choice, whatever you'd like to choose. But the neutral color is black, unless you want to do some kind of artistic stuff like that. Okay, so those are your basic atmospheric lights. Let's take a look now at the different types of lights that you can add to your scene. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my scene here. Actually, I'm going to turn off my IBL in the Visual tab first, okay? So now we have a pitch black scene. Ooh. All right, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to create our first light. It's called the Directional Light. So to create a light in your scene, you can go up here to Create and Light, and I'm going to create a Directional Light. Now this light, you can see the arrow is pointing in the direction of the light. Directional lights are used for like kind of environmental lights, like a sun, for example. It's very useful for that type of thing. Because directional lights, they will cast a shadow. You can't move them. They're just kind of omnipresent, but you can rotate them. And the way you rotate your directional light is you go ahead and press the E hotkey. You can rotate it that way, okay? And you can see that we're rotating and bringing there's light coming in through this window over here on our left-hand side. It's coming in through this window, and it's shining on this yellow wall. And the reason it's shining yellow off that wall is due to global illumination. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Yeah, you can move it, rotate it by using the E hotkey. You can also rotate your last used directional light by using the / key. So say, for example, we selected our Cornell box or something else in our scene, and then we press the / key. That's going to go back to our last used directional light, and we can rotate it again. Okay, very useful. A little tip there. And if we, move our little sphere here up, we can get in the way of that directional light and change our scene lighting quite significantly due to the bounce of light from the global illumination. So with global illumination, you can activate it or deactivate it using this button up here. And I'll explain what global illumination is. It's basically like the simulation of light reflecting off various surfaces. Okay, so if we go to auxiliary light, you'll see this is actually a dark yellow kind of wall, and this is a white wall over here, and we have a gray floor. If I turn off the auxiliary light, because we're shining that light, the directional light, off the yellow wall, it's kind of reflecting back a yellow light, refracting a yellow light back onto the rest of the scene here. So again, it's just simulating the reflection of light off various surfaces. And if I press the / key to move my directional light, see if I move to the white wall, the atmospheric light in our scene is a lot grayer, okay? A lot less warm, a lot cooler, right? If you focus on the white wall or the yellow wall there you go. All right, pretty cool stuff. So that's directional light. Now you can also change the color of your directional light once you have it selected by going to the Modify panel. You can also turn it on and off this way as well. And if you want to make it visible, you can make it visible this way as well. If you want to turn off the shadows on directional light, you can do that as well by using this button right here. We'll talk about that more because it's more effective. You can see that if we do that, then none of the walls are going to cast a shadow. Okay, so it gets really bright. We'll talk about that more with the spotlight. Okay, so there's our directional light. And you can adjust the shadow darkness as well. Okay, again, we'll focus more on that in the spotlight we're going to talk about in just a moment. You turn off shadows completely as well, the same way as when doing it over here. But then there's multiplier, which is kind of like the intensity or strength of your light. Okay, if I change that to something like 2, for example, it's going to be a lot more intense. I can do it something like 3 or 4, and it'll be a lot more intense, almost to a point of being washed out. Okay, so keep in mind that you don't want your light to be too intense. Let's take it back to maybe the default value of 1.2. And let's change our light color from gray to something like the red light district. There you go. Okay, so now we're kind of in a very kind of moody, a dark bar or something like that, and the light's coming into the wall right there. And your global illumination results are going to be a bit different. The red light with the yellow wall will make it more of an orangish kind of reflection off that. Okay, more orange ambient light. Okay, so just keep that in mind. You can change the color and everything as well. And once you know all that stuff, you know pretty much the basics of the light intensity and light color and all that stuff. Different lights have different parameters that we can adjust, but for now we're just going to focus on those ones for this directional light. Okay, let's move on from directional light now to the next one, which is spotlight. So I'm going to go create a light, and the next one is spotlight. Okay, now spotlights are used for stuff like stage performances and stuff like that. But keep in mind that spotlights also cast a shadow. Okay, so we also have the shadow option on the spotlight. If I deselect that, you can see right there that shadow that's casting on that sphere will appear or disappear. Okay, let's focus it on Curveman over here. Now the spotlight is a physical light that you can actually see in your scene, so you can actually move it by pressing the W hotkey. You can move change the direction or change the position of it. If I press the E hotkey, I can rotate the direction like this. We can rotate it directly to shine on Curveman. right? He's the center of attention right here. All right, and let's move to the other side actually. That's where our directional light is coming from here. There we go. All right, good enough. Okay, if we turn off our directional light now, you can see we only have this spotlight, and it's shining on Mr. Curveman to you. All right. Now what we can do here is we can adjust a couple parameters on the spotlight as well. We can change the multiplier value, like we did with the directional light, to a super high value of 3, which is way too washed out. Maybe a value of 0.8 would be a little bit better. Now keep in mind that the closer your spotlight is to your object or to your subject, the more intense it's going to be as well. And we can adjust the darkness of the shadow here. So just like this, you can see the darkness of his shadow behind him is getting lighter and darker. And if you go over here to your visual tab, there's also a shadow section which is right here. And you can adjust the global darkness multiplier as well to make all the shadows in your scene a lot darker. Just like this. Okay, you can see that gets a little bit darker or a lot brighter. Okay, generally you want to keep that at a relatively neutral value. Okay, and there you go. Okay, I like to kind of keep it. Unless you want a really high contrast, gritty, kind of dark scene, you generally want to keep these at a fairly neutral level. Okay, so that's the spotlight, and those are the parameters of the spotlight. There's also intensity, so the range of the spotlight. So you can see we can decrease the range like this, okay? And you can see the range increase on the back wall right there. If we take off decay, what's going to happen is it's going to be a sharp. You can see there's a sharp contrast between the edge of the spotlight. And if we take down that range, you can see right here, it creates a lot sharper of a contrast. Generally, you don't want to do that, so you want to have decay on, so it creates a bit more of a natural look like that. Okay, and then there's angle for your spotlight as well. We can decrease the angle, so focus the angle of the spotlight like this, or increase it and make it a lot wider, okay, to a degree of 150 degrees down to, you know, very small angle right there. And then there's also fall off, okay, so fall off, if we increase the fall or decrease the fall off, you can see it's almost the same as taking off decay. Okay, we get a very hard edge around the edge of our spotlight. So generally, if you want a softer spotlight, you want to increase the amount of fall off. Nothing too extreme, but maybe a value like this would be really nice. Okay, you can rotate that to whatever angle we want. Okay, so there's the spotlight. That's pretty much all the parameters of spotlight. And again, we can go to our scene and combine it with our directional light, and just like that, and make the spotlight invisible. Now there's one other light that I want to talk about here, and that is called the point light. Now the difference between the point light and all the other lights is the point light does not cast a shadow. It's generally just used to kind of light up certain areas of the scene that you want to, you can't seem to be reaching with the other lights, but you just want to light them up. It's kind of like cheating a little bit, but I'll show you what I mean in just a moment here. So let's go ahead and create another light and create a point light. Okay, you can see that's a fairly brightly lit scene at this point, so let's just press the W hotkey and move our point light. Now the rotation of the point light won't matter, okay, just because it's, you know, basically emitting light equally in all directions, okay, it's not focused like the spotlight, but we do have an intensity, a range, okay. So the same values right here, let's actually make our spotlight invisible and our directional light invisible. And you can see the point light in the scene does not cast a shadow like I mentioned before. We can change the position of it like this. And we can change the range. So we can decrease the range. And again, you can use something like the decay. Right? With the decay deselected, it's going to be a very sharp edge of your light. I normally recommend having this on. Now you can combine the decay. Okay, so you can see it's sort of like basically a cheating light. So say, for example, we didn't get enough light in this corner of the room. So we just kind of put that there. Maybe take the intensity down to like 0.7 or something like that, and then we can combine that with the spotlight right there. So we'd still have a little bit of light in that corner. Maybe take it down to like a value of 0.4, and you can just see it just kind of draws a bit more attention to the corner there and lights it up a little bit more. And if you decrease the range even further, you can do something like that, or increase it to add light, overall light to the entire scene. So that's generally what point lights are used for. And again, you can adjust the color of the point lights as well. This would be similar to adding an ambient, pink to the ambient light or something like that. except obviously it's a lot stronger, a lot more intense of a pink color in this corner of the room over here. And if we throw in our directional light there, it creates a whole cacophony of colors in our scene there. All right. So again, you can combine all these different lights together. I'm just going to change this one to a nice kind of atmospheric yellow there. Okay. And you combine all these together to create your ideal lighting in your scene. Whatever look you're going for, it's really up to you. Yeah, that's the basic introduction to all the lights in your scene there. And one final thing about shadows, like I mentioned, for the spotlight, for example, if you didn't want the spotlight to cast shadows, you can deactivate the Activate Shadow button there, okay, so you can turn the shadows on and off. And for characters, say for example, like Mr. Curveman over here, what we can do is we can click on this shadow option here, and we can have no shadows, okay, so he won't cast any shadows in this case. If you want, you can also have him receive shadows only, or you can have him cast shadows only, so he doesn't receive shadows, he only casts them, and you can just have the regular all shadows on to have the most realistic result. But it really depends on exactly what you're going for. So that's about all I want to cover for basics of iClone lighting. We'll have more advanced tutorials that cover more detailed lighting stuff in the future. But thanks so much for watching. Hopefully you picked up some tips and tricks along the way. And make sure you check out our forums at forum.reallusion.com if you have any further questions. And I'll see you in the next video.